committee meeting. I just want to do a quick check with Lee and make sure, as one of our speakers, that he has connected to audio. So Lee, when you can, just confirm for us.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you. It worked.
Yes.
Okay, great. So we are right at the hour. I expect we may have just a few more joining, but I do want to just go ahead and keep as close to our time as we can, because I know we expect a lot of discussion today. So thank you for those of you that were able to join a little bit early. We will certainly continue to welcome our additional partners as they connect here in the next few minutes. So the slides should still be displayed. Let me know if you cannot see what we have on the screen. Okay, it looks like everyone is at least not confirming no, so that's okay. We'll take that as a yes. My name is Holly Mann. I'm the project manager with Constant and Associates. And so this is our opportunity to pull together a formal meeting of the steering committee that was comprised of both members, alternates, and subject matter experts through our contract with Clark County. And we are doing this obviously as a touch point, as a milestone to bring you into the planning process to update the Clark County and surrounding jurisdictions multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. So Lee Rosenberg is on the line with us. He is our subject matter expert who is going to be doing the fair share of the writing for the plan. And we obviously cannot do that writing without all of your contributions. So today was our first attempt at trying to get everyone together, walk through some of the first steps and requests that we have of you as experts in your field. We understand your time is valuable, so we want to make sure that this is time well spent. We will expect to engage with each of you after this point individually, because we know some of these efforts are more time consuming for jurisdictions than others. So we do expect to reach out and gather some information with you one-on-one. So if something doesn't sound quite like it works for you, or maybe you feel like you're outside of the box a bit, we will give you plenty of opportunities to work with our team to modify or correct any of the requests that we're asking that may not apply to you or may feel different in terms of how we apply that to you. So with that, I just want to start by first welcoming you here. We're doing this via Zoom, but we are streaming this through the YouTube channel on Clark County LEPC site. So if you have not had a chance to engage with Clark County on how they advertise their local emergency planning committee meetings, we certainly will make sure you have that link. So if you need to share this with any of your constituents or your subcommittee efforts, you know where to find this. I do want to just also announce that we did have to reschedule this meeting from previously in the month. So I'm sorry if we lost a few people because of that. Hopefully we've gained a few. But thank you for being flexible. It was unfortunately an unforeseen circumstance. We would like to try to keep as many of these dates on the calendar so that you are able to plan in advance for that accordingly. So I do want to just remind everyone, it looks like we're all used to the YouTube format. Just remember that when you're not speaking, keep your microphone on mute, so that'll help to reduce the feedback that we have. If you have any problems with connectivity, if you cannot hear me or you cannot hear Lee, please let us know. So just give us a quick hand, come up on the microphone yourself. Just let us know if we're not coming through clearly. There is a chat feature. You are welcome to use that. We also have some administrative support. Tracy is on the back end of this. And so Tracy, thank you again. She appears as the admin for the Constant icon. You are welcome to message or chat with her directly if you're having any connectivity issues. So then let's just quickly go through and figure out who we have on the call with us today. Do we have anyone representing the city of Boulder City? Okay, nothing heard from Boulder City. Who do we have on from Henderson?
Good afternoon. This is Josie Ross. I'm the emergency management specialist with the city of Henderson.
Great, thank you, Josie. All right, who do we have on from the city of Las Vegas?
Art Perillo, Acting Deputy Chief of Operations for Las Vegas Fire and Rescue.
Yeah, Bradley Anderson, the Assistant Emergency Manager.
Great, glad to have you both on this afternoon. Thank you. Who do we have on from the city of Mesquite? Anyone on from Mesquite? Okay, who do we have on from North Las Vegas?
Hi, this is Travis Anderson. I'm the Deputy Fire Chief as well as the Emergency Manager.
Thank you, Travis. All right, do we have anyone on from Water Reclamation?
Angeline Samansky, Clark County Water Reclamation District.
Thank you, Angeline. All right, anyone on from the Clark County School District?
Mike Wilson, Emergency Manager, Clark County School District.
Great, thank you, Mike. All right, do we have anyone on from the Paiute Tribe?
Good afternoon. This is Harriet Parker, Safety Officer, Emergency Management Coordinator with the Las Vegas Paiute Tribe.
Thank you, Harriet. Do we have anyone on from the Valley Water District?
Corey Ross, Emergency Management Coordinator for Las Vegas Valley Water District.
Great, thank you, Corey. Do we have anyone on from Moapa Tribe? Anyone from Moapa? Okay, and then anyone on from the state of Nevada?
Good afternoon, Ryan Gertzman with the Nevada Division of Emergency Management. I'm the new hazard mitigation planner.
Oh, welcome, Ryan. We are going to keep you busy. Glad you could join. Thank you.
Awesome.
All right, and do we have any other representatives that were not called as part of our attendance and roster today?
Carlito Reyes representing Clark County.
Great, thanks, Carlito. We've got you on for Clark County. Anyone else?
Hey, Holly, this is Travis Anderson. Can you hear me?
We can, Travis. Yes, you
I
came
wasn't
across
sure if you
clear
heard me or
before.
not. I wasn't sure if my system was working, so I just wanted to make sure you got me checked in.
Yes, we have both representatives from Las Vegas on. Thank you.
Clint Spencer, Clark County Public Works.
Great, Clint. Glad you were able to join as well.
Jeff Harper, Moapa Tribal Police Department.
Oh, great, Jeff. You are on. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
Dustin Shalin with Las Vegas Fire and Rescue.
Oh, great, Dustin. Thank you. Glad you're on as well. All right, so we've got good representation to start with our first quarterly meeting. So thank you again. I want to just reiterate our purpose today. So we are clearly here as one of only 4 engagements during the time that we have contracted with you. So our contract works with Clark County through the end of September 2023. So we know that's a little bit over a year to do a lot of work, and we expect our engagements with you to be mostly one-on-one individual between now and the course of the time that we pull together the updated plan and get it back out for public comment and start the adoption and approval process. So we want to make sure that these quarterly meetings are certainly timely, but are also relevant and that we get what we need to get done. So because this is one of only 4, we want to go ahead and set kind of our rhythm for the next 3. So we have a standing constant, has a standing meeting with Clark County as part of just the contract planning phase. And so it's on a Tuesday of every month. And we wanted to just go ahead and check your calendars against several dates. And we sent a doodle poll earlier, and thank you for being so responsive on that. But that was really difficult to find a good date that worked for everyone, and we understand that. So following this call, we will put these dates on your calendar. Obviously, if you have a conflict, that's why you have an alternate member that's represented on our roster. You can also let us know if the alternate member is also not available. What we'll try to do is work with you one-on-one. So we are going to try to put out September 13th. And so that's a Tuesday, September 13th, 2020, 22. And then we are going to propose for 11 a.m. Pacific. So we know today's an afternoon meeting, but that's sometimes difficult for everyone to attend. So we'll aim for September 13, 2022. We'll aim for January 17, January 17, 2023, again, also at 11 a.m. And then we'll aim for June 6, 2023 at 11 a.m. So we'll put those dates out to you after this call, again, on the calendar. We've got time to adjust if we need to, but we'd rather put them on your calendar than not at this point. All right, we also want to talk about, each of you should have received an invitation to access a SharePoint site that Constant manages, and this is only for this effort. So the SharePoint site has been established with folders for each of your jurisdictions so that we can start sharing files and documents freely back and forth. We understand this is going to be a large document-driven effort. So we wanted to make sure it was easier than just by trying to send it by email. I do want to make sure that you can get access to that SharePoint site. We also need to just talk through if there are any concerns or questions with your jurisdiction about sharing documents with us. We can certainly work with Clark County to validate or substantiate any request that we need to solidify to be able to share documents back and forth. We also have a public engagement component to this contract, and so we do want to talk about that today. There is a public involvement plan, a draft that you were sent in advance of this meeting. It was a very minimal draft, but was to give you an idea of what we're trying to develop so that you can share that with your communities. But we also need some information from you to populate that plan and get it out to you so that you can actually actively use it with your communities. We also want to talk about those community events. Not everyone has the same opportunities right now in a virtual setting to be able to engage their community. So what we want to do is garner the efforts that are available. So if you have council meetings or you have certain LEPC-like committee meetings and you want to announce this project, we want to be able to work with you to get you the content that you need to make that a successful engagement to inform your community. And more importantly, we need to work on getting the community's feedback to this effort. We also know that the Clark County LEPC is going to be one of the engagement opportunities that we will utilize for this project. They have a meeting tomorrow. We are not going to make that suspense. We wanted to meet with you first, get your ideas and feedback. So we will look at joining the August LEPC meeting with an update of this effort. And then the majority of the call today is going to be focused on this hazard mitigation planning questionnaire. And that's why Lee is on with us. He's going to walk us through that and kind of the ask of each of your jurisdictions for populating that information. So that should have been part of what you received in advance of this call as well. We'll talk about any next steps and action items going forward. And then ultimately, we're here to have a conversation. So let us know if you have questions along the way. It does not have to be a formal, complex process. Just let us know as we tick through each of these items where you have questions that we need to answer for you. So we'll jump right in. I'm sorry you're having to hear my voice more than Lee's right now, but let me just kind of get through the public engagement. I'll turn it over to Lee to carry the weight of the call. So many of you saw our project timeline in our initial kickoff meeting. This is here just to remind you that we kind of have 3 swim lanes. So we're in sort of the planning swim lane right now. We will end up in a risk assessment and mitigation that kind of straddles each other. And then ultimately, we're going to end up in a planned maintenance phase or a swim lane. So we've got several different efforts in red here, and everywhere you see a thunderbolt is really where we envision pulling you in to contribute to that process as a group. In between those group opportunities, we will be working with you one-on-one for each of those swim lanes and efforts. So let me just pause here and ask if anyone has any sort of questions about the agenda today. If you have any questions about the proposed dates I put out for the September, January, and June steering committee meetings, and then any questions you might have about the project timeline you're seeing. All right, silence is golden, so we'll keep moving forward. All right, again, I mentioned the SharePoint site. So when you do get access, this is what it looks like. So each of you were added, but I understand firewalls sometimes get the best of us. So if for whatever reason you were not able to access that link, please send me an email back, let me know, or you're welcome to put it in the chat, and Tracy can monitor that on the back end here of this call. We will reissue it to you. The effort here is to keep this as simple as possible. It's a standard SharePoint. You'll see a lovely picture of Clark County there, but really I want you just to pay attention to what's on the right of this slide, and that is each of you have a folder, and that folder is there for you to be able to transfer and store documents. So we will gladly, talk about any questions that you have about sharing files. If you cannot, for whatever reason, share to this SharePoint, let us know. We can certainly work with you to get a OneDrive or a Dropbox edition if we need to. So let me just pause there and ask if there are any questions or concerns about the intent or the capability to use SharePoint. Okay, hearing none. All right, then we'll jump right into the public engagement piece. So part of the contract and part of what FEMA expects as part of the local mitigation planning effort is to involve and engage the public or the community that it is intended to serve. And so what we have structured by contract terms is called a public involvement plan. It's really just to tell us what the project's about, tell us who's involved, tell us how long it's going to take, and then tell us how we can access or contribute to the process. And so the public involvement plan really does have to be tailored to the jurisdictions that are responsible for updating the multi-jurisdiction hazard mitigation plan. And it really does need to be tailored to how each of those jurisdictions are going to reach out to their community members, or they make information publicly available. So I am going to stop sharing the slides here, and I want to now share the document that you should have received in advance. And that is what we are going to work from to kind of talk through. So give me just a minute. Okay, it should be displaying now. Let me know if you cannot see what is on the screen. Is that a head nod, Lee? So get thumbs up or solid. Okay. So on the public involvement plan, thank you, Angeline. On the public involvement plan that's on your screen, this was actually tailored after another jurisdiction's recent update to their local mitigation plan. So it is a borrowed effort. And so the borrowed effort, we reviewed this with Clark County. They liked the simplicity of the delivery of this public involvement plan. So that's why you're seeing it in the format that it is. Doesn't mean it needs to be finalized in that format. If you've got a better idea, that's why you're here. We obviously want to just explain what a hazard mitigation plan is intended to do. So the front matter of this plan is to be fairly simple, but obviously point out who is involved in the effort. The jurisdictions that you see listed here and that whose logos or emblems are displayed, these are the entities that were part of the adoption process in 2018. So the 2018 version of the plan, there were several, for whatever reasons, Clark County was just informing us today that the tribes at this time, there may have been something regarding your adoption process during that time. I think you were maybe even out of cycle. So that may have been why you were not part of that original sort of pool of jurisdictions as part of the adoption process for the 2018 version. I think for some of the water districts, there were some internal review processes, but there was obviously something that involved the full adoption that you were not as involved in as some of the jurisdictions here. What we want to do though is figure out what has changed since then. So that's my very large way around the point that what you see on the slide here does not need to be the full final version. If we need to add the water districts, if we need to add the tribes here, we want to include the right entities and jurisdictions that need to be part of the 2023 update. Again, just think in terms of what we need to do to inform your public, engage them, and then ultimately seek adoption through your jurisdictions. So we walk through the process of the plan, really just what it's going to take to get this effort to the state of Nevada for a review process, and then to FEMA for a review and approval process. We want to keep it as simple as possible, just because we understand that each of these efforts have a lot of different tasks behind them. Not all of them are tasks that the public is involved with. So we certainly wanted to just make sure that this was manageable for the public to digest and understand where they fit in that process. So that really leads to this last effort here in the public involvement plan, and that's how can the community be involved. So a lot of this strategy, engage, educate, inform, are best practices that FEMA now recognizes. So this was borrowed directly from FEMA's expanding community engagement and mitigation planning. We can keep that there, or we can talk about adjusting that if we need to. This is really the piece that we're going to need help with from you. So in speaking with our project management team at Clark County, we have reached an agreement that for this effort, Constant and Associates will provide you sort of a scripted update summary of the project and what we are doing to help update this effort, so that you can then decide if you want that on your website, if you want to give that scripted summary to an emergency manager to do some type of a audio recording or a video recording. If you want to use that scripted messaging for any of your upcoming public engagements or council meetings, we wanted to just make sure we gave you the details you need to effectively announce that this project is underway. We do want to talk to you about a survey effort. Part of what we are trying to gain is the public's understanding of hazards in your area. We want their input. We very well could have hazard A at the top of our list across all jurisdictions, but we want the public to obviously tell us what they think is value added. They may think hazard B, C, and D need to be elevated. So we want to be able to engage the public, and so we are going to do that through a survey, and then we will obviously work with each of your jurisdictions to determine where you want that survey posted or available. It was mentioned to consider Facebook. Many of your jurisdictions, I think, have used Facebook for surveys in the past, as well as your websites. And then ultimately, we would want to just know if you have additional events. You may have a community event coming up where you want to actually make this an agenda item. And so we will certainly work with you if that's an opportunity like the LAPC. We would be happy to attend virtually, or we can work with you to get material sort of scripted and ready for someone else to announce that. So let me just pause there. That's a lot to kind of digest, but that is really the intent of the public involvement plan. So everything you see in red on the screen would be input that we need from you. And we would like to kind of populate this no later than the end of July, so that it is available for everyone to kind of collectively pass around, use, and share as opportunities present themselves over the next few months. So let me stop there and ask if there are any questions.
This is Corey. You were talking about some scripting. Is that something that you already handed out to us, or is that something you're going to develop?
Good question, Corey. So no, the scripting would be something we're going to develop. Okay. So we want to make sure that you have a chance to review that. If we are going to provide that for you in Las Vegas for the Valley Water District, we want to make sure that it's something that the city of Boulder City could use, or the city of Mesquite could also use. So there will be some scripting that you'll have a chance to review. We'll pass it back and forth by email, but no, that's to be developed. Any other questions about what we're trying to attempt to do with the community involvement? Okay, hearing none, then we will transition back to the slides. Give me just a minute. Sorry, this does not want to change as quick as I want it to. All right, and let me just make sure you can see that. Good head nod, Lee. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. So then over to you, Mr. Rosenberg, to carry us through the hazard mitigation planning.
Okay, well, thank you. And I managed to get my team of sled dogs outside, so they should quit walking through the video. One of the things that we want to do with this update to your plan, and for any new participants, add to the plan, is to meet all of the FEMA requirements. And FEMA has made the requirements fairly difficult to achieve, and they occasionally move the goalposts around. But we have a pretty good idea of what they want. And for each of the participating organizations, there's some things we need to collect from you. There's a lot of things we need to collect from you, but there's a ask at the beginning of the project that will send you in the form of a data collection questionnaire or template that gets us started. And we're going to ask you, what are the proclamations that your organization has made since the previous plan was completed? I mean, we can go on to your websites and look and try and find that on our own, but you guys know, and you know it, and we'll be able to find it a lot faster. Plus, you'll be able to provide us things like estimated costs, which we would never be able to come up with, and some of the detailed description of any proclamations. And this would be a formal proclamation by your government, proclamation of emergency, where you are able to at least take in some special measures to deal with an incident or disaster. Very simple. We're also going to ask you about any hazard events that caused damage, particularly damaged or flooded structures, the cost of the damage, and we're going to ask you if you participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, damage to insured properties. And we'll pull the NFIP information for your jurisdiction or tribe or district where we can. There's a database. What we don't have, because FEMA hasn't updated it, and maybe you have access and maybe you don't, are the number of policies that are in place. And if you don't, we'll simply refer FEMA back to the fact they don't update their database. So we're going to ask about hazard events and National Flood Insurance Program structures and anything that's happened to them. So next slide. We're going to ask you to provide us with information so we can do the risk assessment and then determine potential losses. And I know this is going to be complicated for some of the larger organizations that have many pieces of infrastructure or property, but we typically ask you for your insurance values for the critical infrastructure and community assets. And that's all of the buildings that the city or town or county or tribe or district owns with their values, which is why we asked for the insurance values, which will probably be the best guess of anybody. And we then try to determine, based on any number of methodologies, those values that are at risk to specific hazards so we can come up with potential losses. And of course, understanding potential losses is key to developing a mitigation strategy. If it's not at risk, there's no point in trying to do something to prevent it from being at risk. We're going to ask you to go through your previous mitigation plan and understand that there may be more than just the current 2018 plan, but we need to update the status of your previous mitigation efforts. So we're going to ask you to go through that plan and give us the name, number, et cetera, of those previous mitigation efforts and an update to where you stand. Was it completed? Was it not completed? Is it ongoing? Should it be included in the next iteration of the plan? And next slide, please. We're going to ask you to provide cultural and historical resources. We can include in there, if you would like, what we would consider environmental resources, endangered species, because you have to always consider endangered species as well as cultural and historical resources when you start planning mitigation items, because you're going to be required to comply with local environmental quality acts. And if it involves any federal funding, which it might, the National Environmental Protection Act. We talked about community engagement. We're going to make a list of how you engage the community for each of the participants. Who did you send a request or information to that they could post on a website or put in a community bulletin or post as a survey, that point of contact, name and email, and whether you sent them the survey. We will compile a community engagement section for each participating organization. And it doesn't have to be a lot. It may just be a survey. If that's enough, post a survey to your webpage, advertise it on your Facebook and other social media accounts, compile, collate the survey, and make some reference that you use the survey to inform the risk analysis and the mitigation items. If you want to do more, we can help you do more up to a certain point. We're not going to do multiple events where we have staff that present the program. There will be some per the contract, and then we're going to organize that as part of our public engagement program. So we're going to ask you to document the community engagement efforts so that we can include them as part of the hazard mitigation plan. And please stop me if you have any questions. I've done an awful lot of these plans. I'm very familiar with the process, and I understand that at first glance, this is just an awful lot of information to ask for. So next slide, please. We're going to ask you to provide us with a list of capabilities. And as you look through the previous plan, you'll see that there are capabilities listed for each participating organization. FEMA Region 9 in particular has become very, very sticky about the capabilities. Not only do they want to know what the capabilities are, they want to know how the hazard mitigation process can enhance that capability. So if you have a general plan safety element, how can the HMP enhance that general plan safety element? And the answer is you can use the analysis in the HMP to improve and expand the general plan safety elements and make sure that the two documents are aligned. So we need to do that for all of the capabilities, including administrative and technical capabilities like GIS or staff engineers or public works engineers, financial capabilities such as your general fund, any special use funds, grant funding, and then education and outreach capabilities, which could be things such as web pages, it could be community events, it could be regularly scheduled safety fairs. Whatever you're doing, we want to capture, we want to list what it is. We can put a link in if you like, understanding that links expire and go dark. And then we want to list how hazard mitigation planning can expand upon that capability. Next slide, please.
Lee, before I move from this slide, can I just ask if this is an appropriate place to just give a quick summary of FEMA's most recent local and state mitigation requirements, knowing that that will not necessarily affect what we're doing, but it is going to at some point expand these capabilities for local hazard mitigation planning.
Right. FEMA is in the process of adopting a new local hazard mitigation planning review tool, which probably will be the one that we end up using, because we're going to be working through 2023 when they adopt this. And what FEMA has done is taken the initiative from FEMA Region 9, so that now all jurisdictions that do an HMP are going to have to be, they're going to be required to expand upon the capabilities and not simply list them, but as I said earlier, they're going to have to explain how those capabilities can be enhanced by hazard mitigation planning. Is that what you were looking for, Holly?
And just recognition that some of these categories may expand a bit. So where we were just talking about environmental or, certain capabilities involving environmental considerations may now have to be all inclusive of climate change and a few other expanding categories. We're now, considering the diversity of communities and a greater capability set for that as well. So if you hear about sort of these emerging expectations coming from FEMA, this is going to be one of those areas in the planning process that we will look to expand as we can through our efforts.
Right, and beyond the capabilities, FEMA now requires that climate change be addressed in all hazard mitigation plans. It can be addressed as an individual hazard, and it can be addressed within other hazards such as extreme heat or winter storms, wherever there's an impact on the hazard from climate change. What we typically like to do is list it as a hazard so we can explain what it is and then address it with some comments on individual hazards. Again, it could be flooding, it could be whatever climate change is likely to result in. We don't have to deal with sea level rise in Clark County. So that's a good thing. We can leave that one out. And then the other thing is FEMA has now required that we address equity in the hazard mitigation planning. We're not exactly sure how that's all going to roll out, but we will see more detail as FEMA puts together the latest guidance for their plan review tool. We'd like access. We don't need copies, but we would like at least the name and the date and perhaps a link to some of your documents, because this is going to inform the planning effort. It's going to be many of your planning and programming capabilities, general plan safety element, zoning ordinance. We need to address land use. We'll ask you to provide us information on land use trends, various fire code information. We talked about NFIP, your emergency operation plan, climate action plans, design guidelines, capital improvement, and stormwater management plans. This is just off the top, some of the multiple planning capabilities that typically a tribe or a jurisdiction would have. Obviously, school and water districts don't have this long laundry list, but you have your own planning document. So we'd ask you for links to those. Okay, next slide, please. I'm going to turn it back to Holly and let her go through what we need to do next. I left out one thing, and we'll talk about this at a later meeting. And this is the real, crux of the matter. What we need more than anything else, all of this documentation, we need you to start thinking about what are the mitigation actions that you want to have in your plan. That's what this is really all about, coming up with concrete, actionable mitigation items. It's great to say continue public outreach and explain the benefits of hazard mitigation. Well, that's good, but it's sort of hard to figure out exactly what that means. But if you say increase the size of a culvert underneath County Road 16 to prevent washout, that's something that's actionable, and it's something that you can write a grant application for. And as much as we want to solve all of the issues that hazard mitigation plans solve, one of the key benefits of having that hazard mitigation plan is it makes you eligible for grant funding. And if you have that particular mitigation activity in your plan, that's a question on your grant application. And it's always great to say yes. Holly, it's all yours.
Thank you, Lee. Certainly worth hearing from an SME's perspective. So thank you for kind of delivering that in a candid fashion. I know that was a lot to digest, but the questionnaire really is kind of our first step for engaging each of you at the jurisdictional level. So Lee, I know as we talk about next steps and action items, do you have kind of a time frame that you would like to receive those questionnaires back from each of the jurisdictions?
You know, we'd like to get them back within 4 weeks, understanding that they're going to have to go to multiple departments or agencies within all of the participants, but 4 weeks. And, you know, my feeling is generally that if you make an ask and nobody responds, if they don't respond within 4 weeks, it's hard to expect something. So we want to give you a timeline, but we want it to be reasonable.
Okay, that certainly helps, and we will add that to sort of our tracking. And after the call today, we will reissue that hazard questionnaire, both in a editable Word document as well as a PDF fillable document, so that hopefully we make it as easy as possible for you to circulate that among your offices and agencies to get those responses that are needed. So then let's just talk about sort of the next steps forward, because several of us have different roles and responsibilities throughout the planning process. So for us on the constant support team side, we are just responsible for really memorializing these discussions. So even though it's been very heavy on the information push today, we do want to start pulling some information from you, but we do want to just document these discussions. Again, these are on Clark County's LEPC site. So we'll make sure you have that link to share for anyone who was not able to attend today. We certainly want to give you the finalized public involvement plan. So as we engage with each of you to try to identify, where you would like to advertise the project on a website, on another social media platform, if you want to use a survey to engage your public community, we'll obviously provide that link and how to access it on your social media platforms. And then we want to hear from you about whether or not there are other upcoming events that we could host or co-host or add an action item for this project announcement. So that'll be part of those engagement events that are happening over the next few months. And then we ultimately want to be able to assist any of you who may be hosting those events and you need scripted material, or you need us through virtual representation. That's kind of our role right now, is just to make sure we're doing the lifting on the content to help you get this word out and get input back from your communities. In terms of Clark County and what we are working with the project management team there, that is sort of being hosted with the city of Henderson. So Josie's on in representation of our project management team. We are really going to work with Josie and Misty Richardson to prepare for a public engagement with the LEPC. Again, we're going to miss tomorrow's LEPC meeting, but we are aiming for the August LEPC delivery. So then looking to you as the steering committee members and alternates, we really are going to ask that you complete that hazard mitigation questionnaire. We will again issue it after today's call with a deadline to have that back no later than July 1st. We would like to start receiving your supporting documentation, storing them in your corresponding folder on the SharePoint site. So please confirm for us if you cannot get access to that SharePoint. We need to make sure that you can. And then ultimately let us know if you have those opportunities to host those public engagements where we can obviously provide you the input and the resources you need to do that successfully. So let me just stop there and ask if there are any additional questions on kind of the ask at this point. Let's see if we've got any comments from the state of Nevada. So I'm really glad we've got a representative on the call. If there's any sort of insight you want to provide to us in terms of the emerging FEMA guidance that's coming down and how to apply that in this effort, we'd love to hear it. Maybe from some of our tribes on the call, if you've got any input on how this is really translating to your community. this time's your time. So I will pause and just open the microphone for your engagement and questions.
I'll defer to anyone that wants to go first. If Harriet wants to speak on behalf of Las Vegas Paiute Tribe or anyone else, and then I can pitch in. I don't want to take up anyone's time if someone already knows what I might say. Okay.
I think they're waiting on you. Go right ahead.
Great in pointing out the new guidance from FEMA. They are particularly interested in climate change and how that affects our jurisdictions and state and nation. They're also very interested in making a priority of equity and inclusion and how we are addressing adequate resources and building resilience in our vulnerable populations within our community. And like you did mention, the hazard mitigation actions are required as well. A minimum of 1 to 3, I want to say, and some of them can overlap and so on and so forth. If there's a particular mitigation action that will apply to different hazards, that is acceptable. They just want explanation of that. And the checklist, in my opinion, I mean, I'm new to this, so you can disagree with me, from not really knowing a whole lot about what they're expecting and what they require, based on just looking at an old one and looking at the new one. The checklist looks like it's a little more laid out on saying, okay, we want this, and this means that, so element A is what we're looking for. Comprised within element A is 1, 2, 3. So it does a better job of laying out those requirements. And I have shared the updated local hazard mitigation planning policy guide with our emergency managers, and I can send that out again, of course. And I'm always here to answer any questions, and I may not know a lot of the answers, but I definitely can find those answers out for everyone. So with that, I'll conclude pending any questions. Thank you, everyone.
Well, that is certainly value added. Lee, did you have any response to any of those comments from the state?
No, I think they're spot on. It's interesting, having worked with many states and many different reviewers at FEMA. While they strive for consistency, every reviewer has a slightly different take on things depending on the plan. You can have the same material in 2 plans. One will go through one reviewer and there won't be any comments, and one will go through another reviewer and they might find one tiny section in one of the elements that they go, well, you could do this better, please, send in correct. And that's just the way it is. They're human, and their guidance is to review and find what could be better. And they'll make recommendations that you don't have to, but some of them they'll require. So we're going to have to work with this new review tool because it's been FEMA Region 9, and we've done this for a lot of FEMA Region 9 plans. We're ahead of the people and the other FEMA regions who haven't had to deal with climate change and some of the equity issues.
One other comment, if I may. They are leaning, the state as a whole, or the nation as a whole, really is leaning heavily on states to adopt statewide building codes. Now, Nevada does not have legislation or any kind of legal authority on local building codes. However, there will be different point systems that will come into effect that will add or subtract, so to say, of grants being awarded. So in Clark County, if there are building codes, definitely want those to be highlighted, or plans on implementing different building codes, reinforced, unreinforced masonry buildings, things of that nature, things just to make things safer when you're building stuff or existing historical buildings.
That is definitely a good reference point, so thank you. Does anyone have any additional feedback, response to kind of what you've heard today, the ask that we are going to be placing on each of the jurisdictions for information? Any additional questions regarding the emerging guidance from FEMA that we just heard from the state of Nevada?
You know, just one quick thought, sort of to get back to actionable mitigation items, which I've harped on. That becomes an actionable mitigation item, is that all of the jurisdictions where applicable or participants consider adopting this state building code to provide consistency throughout the state and enhance their ability to get grant funding. So I like that idea, and we'll include it in the notes because that could be a mitigation item for everybody.
Hi, this is Sam Baker. I'm with Clark County's Department of Environment and Sustainability. I just wanted to share that we do have, we're working on a sustainability and climate action plan for the county. And we recently wrapped up a climate vulnerability assessment. We don't have the full report, but we do have the technical report for right now, and the full report should be released shortly. So I'll be sure to share all of that information. And just kind of, you know, as a side note, one of our guiding principles for our plan is equity. So hopefully, you know, some of the documents that we have there will help be a guiding piece or inform whatever we're putting together.
Oh, that's great to hear, Sam. Thank you. Did you want to respond to that? Sorry, I didn't mean to step over your microphone there.
Yes, please. Thank you. Sam, thanks for bringing that up. Another thing that FEMA is really looking for this time is obviously emergency managers. We're all about collaboration, coordination, right? They really want to see that within the hazard mitigation plan to include funding, different studies, different partnerships that are part of your mitigation actions. So all of those things will weigh heavily as well in the updates to the hazard mitigation plan. So list all of your partners, whoever they are, like say, hey, we got the Red Cross to do emergency housing or whatever it might be, Salvation Army for food or whatever partners you have. Those are all resources that you bring to the table within your local community that count towards your mitigation actions and ability to take care of those in times of disaster.
All right, do we have any other questions, inputs? I mean, I definitely think this is well worth the discussion if we have other mitigations that we just want to discuss as a group. And certainly, Lee, you gave us some to consider, having the state on the call with us, as well as you, Sam. These are great contributions. Harriet,
Hi, Holly,
we didn't have a chance.
Yeah, this is Harriet Parker for the record. So I was going back through my email and I'm trying to find where I received any information regarding the SharePoint site access. I'm not finding that. I'm not finding some of the information that we've spoke of today. Was it inside of the, I mean, was there a link that was inside some of the notes or the minutes that were put out? Was it sent separately? I can't find anything. So I was kind of concerned about that.
No, and I'm glad you're bringing it up because we find that, you know, sometimes we have the best of efforts. It gets outside of our firewall and who knows where it goes from that point on. So Harriet, I've got several others I'm looking up as well. So I will reissue your access, make sure that I confirm it with you by email. So no worries, anything that we talked about today, you will get as a follow-up email, as documents included.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I was stressing out. I thought, oh my gosh, did I miss it? Was I not paying attention? And so no, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
No, it's not worth the stress. We're all in this together. We'll just reissue it. Thank you. Harriet, any other comments from the Paiute tribe regarding kind of the layout with the public engagement strategy to the questionnaire to any emerging mitigations that you want us to kind of consider and just go ahead and take for note?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head at the moment, but you were correct when you were showing the slide and it listed all of the partners. What happened originally was, I believe when the plan was approved, just before that, word came down from FEMA that they were making changes to the tribal hazard mitigation plan, and that they wanted us to hold off until those changes went into effect. And it only was for tribes at that time. And so that's why we were kind of on a different little timeline there. And that's why ours wasn't approved until the following year. It was like 6 months later, after, I believe those changes from FEMA came out in December of 2018. And so then we made our adjustments, and then it was added as an annex to the Clark County's plan in early 2019, I believe is what happened. So, but yeah, that's kind of the history on that. But I don't think I have anything else at the moment, but thank you.
Well, thank you. We're certainly glad you're involved in the effort now. And we did confirm, it looks like Misty Richardson was able to join. So, Misty, feel free to step on me on this end. But we were able to confirm, Harriet, that we are going to include the tribes in this update. So even though you were ahead of us on a couple of months on the timeline, we'll just fold you into this effort for the 2023 update.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions today? All right, Lee, I'm going to ask if you have any sort of closing remarks for the group. They know to expect some follow-ups from us. So certainly, take us away and let us know if there's anything else you need before today's conclusion.
Just want to thank everybody for their time and the efforts that you're going to make. I'm available by email or phone call if you have any questions. I realize there's a lot to get done. Some of this is not within what you do on a daily basis. And my goal is to get the plan put together and be an absolute rock solid effort that gets through the state of Nevada and FEMA with no comments. Now, that's asking a lot for such a large plan, but please talk to me. I will bother you if you don't send me the material. I won't say that I spent 30 years tracking Soviet submarines, but I did, and I always found them. And I will track you down politely and ask you to provide the material.
All right, with that, Misty, is there anything else you would like to add before we conclude today?
Just that I'm very appreciative for those of you that made it on the call today. I was a little nervous with the fact that we had to reschedule, so I do appreciate everyone's flexibility with that. Attending these is vitally important so that we can capture the information that's out there. Our office is not the end all be all and subject matter expert in all of this, so we are completely reliant upon our partners to participate to the fullest capacity that they're able. So with that, I just, again, appreciate your time. And as Lee has said, we do understand that it's a big ask, but as a region, it's everyone's responsibility to make sure that this is as robust and comprehensive as possible. So just your efforts are noted and appreciated.
All right, with that note, then we will give you back the remainder of your afternoon. Expect some additional follow-up by email, and we will be reaching out to each of you individually to acquire some additional information and answer more questions. Thank you again, and we will be in touch. You are free to disconnect.